Hello there, IELTS students. Welcome to IELTS Podcast. You no longer have to worry, fret or panic about IELTS because we are here to guide you through this test jungle. Enjoy these IELTS tutorials, and if you need more help or want to access the famous online course, you can visit us at IELTSPodcast.com.
Hello again, hello and welcome to another edition of IELTS Podcast. With me, Rob, the teacher that you may have heard before, or maybe you haven't. If you haven't, well, I've been around quite a long time, probably far too long teaching, an IELTS examiner as well. I enjoy what I do. I still enjoy teaching. I still enjoy helping people with IELTS. And today, I'm going to give you some interesting topics. It's a topic, which I think a lot of you would find a little bit challenging. I know that most people, not everyone, but the majority of people who take IELTS come from sciences, engineering, the medical profession, law, computer science, and so forth. Not so many from the artistic side, if you like, from the humanities side. That's an interesting point when we talk about topics which may be relatively new for you, because the topic I'm going to talk to you today about is titled, very simply, Government Supporting Artists. Government supporting artists. Now, what is that all about? Well, come on, let's go back in time. I mean, for many, many, many years, for many centuries, famous people, I guess Mozart, famous composers, famous poets, even, I suppose, other types of writers, depended on their patrons, rich people who would take care of them financially. Otherwise, how could they live? You didn't earn a fortune by writing a poem. You had to have a rich person backing you up in some ways. Has that changed over time? A big debate in the country I come from the UK in recent years, in fact, has been connected to that. I mean, should we give artistic groups, all the way from poets to ballet dancers to even, rock groups and different types of artists, financial assistance? Do we really need the arts? How important are they for our lives? And should we subsidize them? Painters, musicians, poets, it's a complex issue. You will hear arguments in favor and against it. Today, we're going to get into this topic. I mean, what we're thinking about, once again, is something which is really hot these days on IELTS podcasts. That is the ways that you can use these different tools that's being offered there to help you raise your score, get a high band score in IELTS, in all parts of IELTS. Today we're thinking in particular about writing and speaking, but of course it could also include listening and reading too. I mean, you've got the essay checker, for example. You can sign up, send in your essays and get instant feedback. Well, 48 hours maximum feedback. When I say instant, I don't really mean instant, but you know what I mean. It's quick, it's efficient, it's professional. You get the news about where you stand. Am I doing okay? Where can I improve? What are my good points? What possible grades will I get? You get the grades if you go for the premium, and then you get access to all kinds of things, including what I'm using today, this recent addition to the IELTS podcast site, the IELTS Topic Ideas book, which Ben created. Very, very, very good, in my opinion. Lots of interesting topics. When we think of IELTS in terms of topics, in terms of the basic vocabulary, in terms of essays on these topics, in terms of speaking questions, it's very useful. It's a very useful tool. It can really help us, organize our ideas. It's a quick way into getting to think about, wow, they often ask questions on this topic. Do they often ask questions about this? Maybe not so frequently as other topics, but I think it is something that does come up occasionally. We've got a grammar point as well, and it's quite a tricky grammar point. It's called inversion. Now, what is inversion? Inversion, of course, is when you swap around the order of the words. You put the verb in front of the subject, as we would do in questions. Are you feeling good? I am feeling good. You put the verb in front of the question, all right? In front of the subject, rather. Are you feeling okay, for example? But in more complex structures, it's quite interesting. For example, listen to this. If I said something like this, the government's role in supporting artists has never before been so controversial. The government's role, my subject, in supporting artists, part of the subject too, and then I've got the verb plus this idea of never before, has never before been so controversial. Listen to the way I can take that never before and put it right at the beginning. Never before has the government's role in supporting artists been so controversial. Another example with only when. This time I'm going to read the inverted sentence first. Only when we recognize the importance of art can we justify the government's funding. Put it another way, we recognize the importance of art only when we can justify government funding. And another example with so vital. So vital is the role of artists that many argue for increased government support. We could think of lots of examples like this in many, many different topic areas. What about one for IELTS? Let me invent one. Okay, IELTS is so important for your future studies. Okay. So important is the IELTS exam that millions of people take it every year to help them with their academic and professional careers. It's an example. I just made it up. It's not a perfect example. I'm sorry, but it's not bad. It's not bad. Let's continue. We'll be looking again at that grammar point when we get into the idea of the writing, different writing on this. Okay, supporting artists. Should government support artists? It's a topic I think is very interesting from my point of view, mainly because when I was at university many, many years ago, I studied literature, and I've always been interested in the arts. So in favor of support, well, yes, artists can contribute to the cultural richness of a country. Think of any country in the world and you think of, okay, let's take Italy. What do you think about Italy? Oh, the films, the filmmakers, the artistic nature of the films they make. Okay, so art and filmmaking, as well, of course, as classic art and sculpture, is a very important part of how we associate different things with Italy. Another example, government support can help artists to pursue their work without financial stress. I mean, that is a very important thing. If you have something to contribute as an artist, no matter what type of artist you are, you need to work and live without, worrying about paying the bills. I mean, that old-fashioned idea of, the poets starving to death in some lonely attic room, unable to pay the rent and using a candle to write with. That's just a ridiculous romantic idea. Forget about it. Artists have to eat just like anybody else. So, of course, another example might be government funding can encourage innovation and creativity in the arts. On the other side, on the other hand, the negative aspects, the cons, well, what if governments get involved in artistic expression? Government funding for the arts can lead to censorship or control over artistic content. Other people might argue that public money should be spent on essential services, healthcare and education. Of course, they're right. I mean, money should be spent on all of these things in a perfect society. But where is that perfect society? It doesn't exist. And, another possibility, of course, you may have this idea of nepotism. If you're a friend of the government, for example, government support may favour established artists or favourite artists over emerging talent. So it's a hard one. I mean, could you criticise the government? I mean, that's what artists do, isn't it? I mean, they're there to look at what society is and to say, hey, let's think about this, let's criticise it. So we've got a lot of vocabulary there. Remember, these vocabulary tools are very important when you're preparing for any aspect of the IELTS test. How these words stick together on certain topics, for example. We might talk about in our special vocabulary here, financial stress, public funding, promote critical thinking. We need a balanced society. We're not all going to be, just working to make money and creating, scientific objects. It's important, of course, it's vital, but at the same time, we need the arts. We need that kind of critical reflection of ourselves through artistic works. Okay, let's go back to those model sentences we could think of using inversion. If we said, for example, something like this: only by recognizing the cultural richness artists bring can we understand the need for government support. It's interesting there, of course, we've got to have the inversion not only by putting only by at the beginning, but we've got can we understand and not we can understand. Thinking about it in another way, if I wrote that as an ordinary sentence with no inversion, recognizing the cultural richness artists bring, wait a minute. Through recognizing the cultural richness artists can bring, we can understand the need for government support. Another example. So severe can the financial stress on artists be that government support becomes essential. So severe can the financial stress on artists be. Study that structure, how it's inverted. Look at your grammar sections of whatever sources you have for English grammar and get into it. That is a very advanced structure. Remember, in the GRA part of writing, also in the speaking test, although this is more something we would write and not use in a natural flowing conversation so much. This kind of structure will score you very, very high marks if you use it accurately and appropriately in a writing test, for example, in a task 2 writing essay. Okay, let's move on, because we're talking about obviously thinking of examples here. We've got a lot of examples. Let's take one more example. Let's take so important. We're saying that the role of art in promoting critical thinking is so important that it should be publicly funded. I'm going to invert it by putting so important at the beginning. So important is the role of art in promoting critical thinking that it should be publicly funded. There are more examples here. I mean, I really recommend for your own benefit that you get into this through your essay checking, signing up to that, and then getting access to this IELTS Topic Ideas book. This is book 2. There are 2 books now with lots of different topics, very, very vital topics, common topics which are going to come up. We don't know which topics come up in each exam, but we can predict easily the types of topics that traditionally and recently have come up in both the writing and in the speaking test. So get into it. It's very well worth your time. It will save you a lot of time, and in the long run, probably save you money by investing a little bit of money now to get immediately high quality feedback. Okay, all right. So we've got our topic: should we support artists? The points in favor, the points against. What is our position with regard to that? Let's think about a model essay. Our model essay question in this case is a discuss both views. I mean, it's good that these discuss both views and give your own opinion are probably the types of essays which we find more demanding, because you've got to do three things at the same time. You've got to argue in favor and against something, looking at both points of view, and also expressing how you feel about it. It's asking for three different things at the same time. Listen to this question. Some people think that the government should spend, let me start that again. Support, not spend. Some people think the government should support artists like painters, musicians, and poets, while others believe this wastes money. Discuss both views and give your opinion. There it is, a classic IELTS question. The answer to this one, introduces in the first paragraph the idea that, yes, this is a controversial topic, and doesn't use the word controversial. It uses the expression a contentious issue. Beautiful word, contentious. Something which is contentious is open to different opinions. You have mixed opinions about it. It's controversial. Listen to the sentence. Listen to the paragraph, just two sentences. The first paragraph. The role of the government in financially supporting artists is a contentious issue. While some argue that it is a waste of public funds, others contend that it is essential for the preservation of a country's cultural richness. So we have these two opposing points of view. Do we want to promote our culture? Is it making us richer as a nation? Or are we just throwing money away on when we could be spending the money on more practical things like, Okay. Then the essay takes this kind of trend. The second paragraph argues in favor. The third paragraph, against. Supporters of government funding for artists argue that it is crucial for the promotion of cultural diversity and creativity. Again, the introductory sentence has to be backed up. How do we back it up? Well, by giving more explanation. They believe that without such support, many artists would face insurmountable financial stress, potentially leading to a decline in the quality and quantity of artistic output. Furthermore, another point he's going to make, they argue that public funding can help to preserve traditional art forms that might otherwise disappear. So important, this is our inversion, so important is the role of art in promoting cultural thinking and empathy that many believe it should be publicly funded. A great paragraph, just how many? 4 sentences, introducing the idea, backing it up with detail, with examples, and another example after that, and rounding it off with how important this is according to many people. The third paragraph argues against this topic. I won't read it all, but just read a part of it. It begins with, on the other hand, critics of government support for artists argue that it is an inappropriate use of public funds. Then examples. It says the government has more pressing responsibilities, healthcare, education, and the arts should be self-sustaining, pay for themselves. Not so easy, not so easy. Where do you get the money from? It costs money to paint, to write, to sculpt, and do all kinds of things. Theatre, for example, and filmmaking too. You need a lot of support. Watch any film and look who is sponsoring that film. Particularly European films are often sponsored. They get cash from the European Council. That's the way that art has to be, because it's not just, rich people in Hollywood making films. There are also very good filmmakers out there who need financial backing, what we call these days independent movies, which are often, in my opinion, much better than the Hollywood blockbusters. Okay, that's my opinion. Okay, so That third paragraph gives us some examples and rounds off the idea. The idea in this case, of course, is to give your own opinion. How does it do it in this case? The final paragraph. In conclusion, while there are valid arguments on both sides, I believe that the government has a role to play in supporting artists. The cultural richness that artists bring to society is invaluable and justifies the allocation of public funds. However, it is crucial that this support is provided in a way that respects artistic freedom and integrity. A nice little paragraph to finish off there. Let's go on to thinking how we can apply this also to possible questions, particularly in part 3 of the speaking tests. For example, arguments in favour, a question in favour. Look at this one. Should the government fund all types of art, or should they select specific forms to support? Answer, possible answer. Oof, that's a tough question. I don't know much about this. I'm no expert on this topic, but I guess you could say that ideally the government should support a diverse range of voices in the arts. But I guess, in reality, it might be necessary to prioritize certain forms of art, perhaps those that are at risk of disappearing or those that have a particularly significant cultural value. I don't know. Ancient forms of dancing. I don't know. I just don't know. Folk music. What about folk music? Culturally, particularly with small countries, their traditions, their folk music, as well as other aspects, their cooking, their cuisine, it's very important to preserve it because it's part of our identity. You know what I mean? Another question. How has the role of government in supporting artists changed over time? Remember, often in the speaking test, we do get that question where we're asking to compare now and before. So has it changed over time? Again, the answer shows that it's not a topic we handle very well, and it's also good for you to look at those phrases. It's a topic I never really thought about before, so this person starts off by saying, ooh, I never really thought about that before, but I suppose you could say that the role of government in supporting artists has become more prominent over time. In the past, artists were often supported by patrons. But in the modern era, government funding has become a significant source of support for many artists. However, this varies greatly from country to country and is often the subject of debate. It's true, isn't it? Just sit back. I don't know where you're coming from. You come from all countries all over the world, but I'm sure in your country this is also an issue. In some countries, the arts are heavily supported by government. In others, there's very little government support. And also you get this influence of, whatever. Do you support the government? Are you friends with the government? And so on and so forth. We're not going to talk about politics here. Because we're talking about IELTS and how to improve your score. How to use these tools as well as you can to get a high grade in your IELTS exams. What about in your country? There is a question here too. Let's just finish off with that one. Is government support for artists common in your country? Yeah, it is quite common, I guess. It is actually, because the government recognises the importance of cultural richness and the role that artists play in contributing to this. But it depends, the level of support actually depends on the type of art it is and the artist's reputation. It's not a perfect system, but I think it gives some support to artists in general. So, that's all for today. Coming back to my point before about the essay checkers and using the tools that we've got here online on IELTSPodcast.com, I think it's worth it. I don't go around recommending things just because, I feel like it, but I think if something's worth it, it is worth it. And I think this is a very, very good idea. I don't know how many people are doing this every day. It's reaching a couple of thousand, I think, according to Ben. He told me that last week, that they're getting like a couple of thousand, 2,000 essays in every day to check. So get yourself on that list if you haven't done it already, okay? So that's all for today. Take good care of yourself, keep studying hard, and I'll be with you again sometime soon. Okay, bye-bye.
to IELTSPodcast.com.